Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm TES Senior Editor Simon Locke, and today I'll be asking whether the use of play can be an effective way of boosting adolescent mental health. Whether it's introduced to the classroom or something conjured up on the playground, children of all ages can benefit from the experience of play. But increasingly, these opportunities have been squeezed, especially among adolescents. The pressure of academic targets and more recently a lack of social interaction caused by multiple lockdowns have all meant less playtime, which some suggest is having a profound impact on the mental health of our young people. So how can we give these children the opportunity to play in a way that is both engaging and effective? To help me answer this question, I'm joined by a panel of educators and experts, including Professor Helen Dodd from the University of Exeter, Michaela Brown from the Inderrida Centre in East Sussex, and Vicky Williams from Fortis Academy in Birmingham. Thank you everyone for joining me on the webinar today. Just to get things started, I thought I'd just go around the room or the table or the virtual table just to get everyone's a little introduction and a little bit about why you're involved in this conversation, what you've been doing around sort of play-based ideas. Helen, is it all right if I come to you first?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for inviting me to join you today. I'm Helen Dodd. I'm a Professor of Child Psychology at the University of Exeter. And my background is in children's mental health. So really thinking about what causes children to have mental health problems and what we can do to try and prevent mental health problems from arising in the first place. And at the moment, I have a UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship, which funds a big programme of research looking at the relationship between play and mental health and how we might use play, particularly kind of risk-taking and adventure in play, to help prevent some anxiety in particular, but mental health more broadly.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. Vicky, over to you.
So I'm Victoria Williams. I work at Fortis Academy, which is a huge secondary school over in Birmingham. So for the past 2 years, I've been here for 15 years as an art teacher primarily, and a lot of pastoral work as well in my background. But for the past 2 years, we've done Thrive training, and then we've now been using loads of the ideas around Thrive and a lot of play in order to kind of delve into that a bit further, and that's kind of led me to here today, really. It's been a complete game changer for me, everything to do with Thrive and the way that it works in terms of getting to the looking beyond the behaviours, I suppose, and that's been very helpful. So it's been quite a journey, but it's definitely a good one, and has opened my eyes quite a lot, and not just within work but also for my children at home too. So I think it's been quite important.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, great. And Michaela, do you want to give a quick intro?
I'm Michaela. I've worked within SEMH for 13 years now. I teach home cooking, life skills, and I'm also a Thrive practitioner. I work for a establishment that is primarily care, but we also have education attached to that. So most of the children I work with are actually in care with us as well. And I feel like Thrive as well as give us the foundation of greater learning and a greater understanding of children's behaviours and how we can work alongside that.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, great. Well, I'll kick off with a few questions then, if that's okay. Helen, I'll come to you first as you're sort of setting the scene a little bit with your research. What does the evidence suggest the benefits to children's mental health when it comes to play?
Yes, I think it's really important to kind of clarify at the beginning what we mean when we say play, particularly because I know we're going to focus today thinking about kind of older children and adolescents. And so for me, play is what we as individuals decide we're going to do because we just want to do it. Okay, so it's what you do when somebody else isn't telling you what to do. So mostly, obviously we talk about play in young children, and it seems like as children get older, we talk about play less. But actually play is good for all of us. Okay, so the pandemic's been really nice for demonstrating that. Actually, if you think, I don't know about you guys, but hopefully people who are listening at least will appreciate, when we were in lockdown, what did we do? We started doing quizzes online with our friends and online escape rooms and things that look a lot like play, right? So everybody plays. It feels good to do the things that you want to do just because you enjoy doing them. And so in terms of mental health, play offers lots of benefits. One is just about that feeling of positive emotion, right? Just the joy of just doing something because you want to do it. And that feels good, right? And maybe that's enough. Like some people, really strongly argue that when we think about play, we shouldn't be thinking about play being for something else, that play in itself is valuable, as in, we're intrinsically motivated to do it. But it's also likely that it does have benefits for other aspects of our lives. So because we choose what we're going to do, play allows us that opportunity to kind of select things that map onto how we're feeling. So children and young people might use play as a way of making sense of things that are going on, as a way of expressing themselves. And anybody who works with young people, and it's also true for adults, knows that getting things out and having opportunity to express is so important for mental health, right? And also when we provide the environment that allows children and young people to play, to express themselves, to be creative, then it also allows those opportunities to sort of experiment at the edge of the comfort zone a little bit, to push the boundaries a little bit, to play with risk and things like that. And if we allow people to do that, then there's so much to be learned in that space about what's too much, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, about how to assess risk, how to make good decisions, how to cope in those situations. And if we remove all the opportunity to do that, then what we're left with is very bored young people. And what do we do when we're bored? Then we do things that aren't productive and don't feel good for our mental health. So there's lots of reasons that play can be beneficial for mental health, partly just that positive emotion, but also lots of learning opportunities and opportunities for expression as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. And what are some of the research that you've been involved with recently on that subject?
Yeah, so we recently completed the British Children's Play Survey, which is focused on primary age children, and where we were looking at how much children played, where they played, how adventurously they played. And one of the things that we found there was that children's opportunity for kind of freedom in their play, so playing out not with the supervision of their parents, within a generation, the age that children have the opportunity to play independently has increased by 2 years. So it used to be that when children were aged on average about 9, then they could go out by themselves and sort of start exploring their neighbourhood and building dens with their friends and those kind of things. And now it tends to be not until children are about 11, so just before that transition to secondary school, that they're starting to get that independence and going out without anybody sort of watching them. So I think that's a really important finding. That means that when children are going into secondary school, they've had actually very little opportunity to have that independence, to explore the world by themselves, to make decisions by themselves. And so, the kids that are then making that transition have had so fewer learning opportunities in terms of how to manage their own lives and make good decisions about risk, etc. And then other things in relation to that survey, we saw that as children get older, they play less. So we weren't looking at screenplay, which is important to say here. So if we hadn't looked at screenplay, I'd imagine that screenplay would increase as children get older. But that other kind of play, what you think of as more kind of pure play that doesn't involve a screen, that does decrease as children get older, which is exactly what you would expect. But I think it is important that we keep in mind that play might look different as children get older, but probably it still offers some kind of benefit. So whilst they might perceive, I don't play anymore, like I'm too grown up for that, actually providing an opportunity for them to do something that is playful, even if they don't call it play, probably would be beneficial for them.
Yeah, well, that's some interesting points there, especially related to adolescence, with children perhaps arriving at that phase in their life not having had the opportunities that perhaps we would have done 20 or so years ago. So they've been starved a little bit, and I guess opportunities have sort of been dwindling over time generally, but also even more compounded in the last couple of years with lockdown and everything. Have you seen any evidence of that in your work, of this sort of decline in play forced by the pandemic?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So the research that I just talked about showing this that children are older now, that they get that independence. That backs up, multiple studies that have been conducted all over the world in sort of Western countries, showing that there's really this decline in play. So the amount of time that children spend playing, the amount of freedom they have, how far they can travel by themselves, all of that has been declining for decades. And then even things like the number of children who walk to school by themselves, and the number of children who go to friends' houses after school rather than just going straight home has declined. But the pandemic obviously has changed all of our lives hugely. And one of the things that really, really concerned me during the pandemic, and that I did some campaigning around, was the fact that children and young people were not allowed to see their friends. So even when as adults we could start going out, and you could exercise with a friend or something, that didn't necessarily apply to children and young people, and it was never made very clear whether they were allowed to do that or not. And 2 years in our lives is a long time, but 2 years when you're 11 going in and 13 coming out, or 13 going and 50, those are huge developmental periods in children and young people's lives. And so to not have that social interaction and not be out and about and doing the things that you kind of should be doing at that age is really concerning. And I feel like we often didn't appreciate enough quite how much they were missing out on. And whilst that they could play online and they could connect in a way that I guess 20 or 30 years ago we wouldn't have been able to do had we been in a lockdown situation. Obviously there were positives there, but it's not the same as having that freedom, being away from adults watching you all the time, your parents watching you all the time, and adolescence is so much about defining yourself and breaking away from that sort of that family model, more into your friends become more important, and you need that opportunity to try out different roles and try out different things and work out who you are, and being kind of stuck at home with your parents all the time and only having that social connection online just doesn't allow you to do that.
Of course, yeah. The two educators here, with it, Vicky and Michaela, does that sort of chime with your experience? Those stories from Helen, the sort of decline in play. Are you seeing children come to you perhaps who haven't had those opportunities? Vicky, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, definitely. So my area of school is quite unique, really, in a secondary school. That we've got a specialist area, our zone, that it's all about kind of Thrive intervention, but also it's like small group activity, and then that feeds into mainstream. So some pupils come to us for like an hour a week, other pupils will check in 3-4 times a day, but what we really saw obviously after the lockdown is the fact that their ability to kind of socially interact with each other was quite extreme, or actually they were quite the opposite. So a lot of parents are ringing up saying, my child's almost forgotten how to make friends, because I think they feel this pressure almost of what's expected of me. How am I supposed to play with these people who I feel like we've gone into a different year group and now it feels like I don't really know them anymore? And so we've been kind of focusing around trying to kind of bring that back a little bit, and allowing them to even being like playful with our language as well, in order to kind of get them to make decisions for themselves, but without the pressure of saying, well, you need to do that. Like, by being quite clever with your language, you can kind of, I suppose, coerce teenagers into doing what you want them to do, but without being direct about it. And I think that forms, exactly like Helen just said, it forms part of play in itself, and that in turn increases your relationship with them. Ultimately, if teenagers feel safe and feel like they are valued as part of the society, and if that society is our school kind of community as well, then they will make those better decisions because they will feel that they are supported to do so. And I think a lot of that we've thought about through play within our department. It has definitely, when I thought about it, when I was asked the question, I think you don't realise quite how much of it you do until it's pointed out. And it's taken me back to kind of some like the role play things. Like, as an adult, you don't you just don't do it anymore. And it's actually been really quite nice to do it, because then I've also put that into practice at home with my own children, which I probably wouldn't have felt as comfortable doing, because actually some of it is about just being a little bit silly sometimes, and that's okay. And telling our children that it's okay to be a little bit silly sometimes, that's okay too. So it's just embracing and being curious of it all, isn't it?
True. Yeah, that's probably the flip side to the lockdown. The lack of sort of play maybe is seeing lots of adults messing around on TikTok and saying, actually, yeah, maybe we can be a bit silly at the same time. But Michaela, what about you?
Well, as an alternative provision, we were said by the government and Department of Education that we had to still be in. So we all worked right the way through. What we did do is that we have a farm-based site and we have a school academic site. So what we did do is split the sites so that there was no cross-referencing of staff or students, so we had bubbles. I actually found that there were some really good relationships built during that time, because our cohort of students are in care. We became the consistent ones around them. We actually got more learning done on a fun base as well. So it didn't affect us as much as I think it affected actual mainstream. I enjoyed lockdown personally, because there was no traffic to get to work. And I think the young people did, in a respect. At first they were like, well, why have we got to be at school, and other people haven't, and it was trying to explain it, and I think they got it in the end. But I actually think we had a lot of positives from being in lockdown and actually being in work and having students still in face to face.
Great. Yeah, brilliant. So should we get on to some of the sort of practical examples and some case studies of how you guys have sort of introduced play-based ideas? Vicky, I'll come back to you if that's all right. What sort of things have you used with your students, and any of that have been sort of particularly effective?
Yeah, so I mean, we do it, or obviously as part of a Thrive profiling. You've got your action plan, and as part of that action plan, it's about kind of that routine, and that relentless routine, really. So part of that can be that every time we finish a Thrive session, we always play Uno. For some reason, Uno has become like a rite of passage down here at the moment. And what's been nice about that as well is that it allows a lot of discussion, because it's quite a simple game to play. It allows a lot of discussion, but a pupil can sit there and talk to me or talk to the other people in the room without the pressure of eye contact, without the pressure of like feeling like they're being kind of grilled, I suppose. But it's led into quite a lot of kind of openness in discussion, quite a few safeguarding issues, unfortunately, but that by the nature of that, that's what's got to come out because of the trauma they might have been through. One case in particular where I think I think it became overwhelmingly obvious to me the importance of playing games was one game of Jenga with a completely non-verbal student who came in hiding under their coat. It always had to come in supported by parents, just wouldn't say a word to me. And I just gradually started taking pieces of the blocks out, and I just said, it's your turn now. And of course, there was no pressure. There was no pressure to speak. Immediately, as soon as the tower started growing, as soon as started having this interaction, but was still completely non-verbal. But it broke down so many barriers that we then developed a really good relationship off the back of that. And then he started talking to me, the hood started to come down, and I couldn't have done that without, it sounds dramatic, but I couldn't have done that without Jenga. It definitely helped me at that moment in time, because it took the pressure off. And there's just been so many instances like that where we've got children together, and we do some like peer mentoring as well, where we've got pupils who really, really struggle to make friends because they just don't know how to do it. And there isn't a skill to making friends. There really isn't. It's not a big secret that we're not telling them. But I think they felt like it was just something they just couldn't do. And so, again, bringing those pupils together with play meant instantly just broke down so many barriers. And then the conversation started flowing, and then they don't need that so much. But then actually, if you listen in and you are alongside them, but you're not part of anymore, you kind of start to back away, and you can hear that they are still kind of playing together because they've now developed those strategies in order to help them to get on with each other. And I just think that was just so important. So I think those are the two, probably the couple of things that really, really stand out to me as that highlighted it. In terms of the rest of our staff, I think it took a while for a few people to get on board. Initially, it looked like we developed this department in school where people just came and played Uno. Actually, there was a much bigger picture to it. And I think gradually people could start to see that it was having a big effect. Developing that relationship was so important to finding out the key things that made that pupil successful within their lesson. And then we could then put that into their plans, their passports that go into lessons. And it just all started to kind of fit together. And now lots more people are on board and doing the same kind of things.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that idea of sort of introducing a bit of non-verbal communication and sort of reframing teacher-student relationships is a really important one. Michaela, how about you? Have you got any sort of particularly effective examples that you've seen or used?
Yeah, I think what Professor was saying about the play-based learning is, I think it's quite hard to go from children, thrive play with children. I think it's finding ways that work with teenagers, adolescents, and obviously being an alternative provision. We haven't only got young people that have got huge gaps in their learning, we've got students that have got huge gaps in their development through ACEs and things like that that's happened before. What I found has worked really well is I've done a lot of upcycling projects. So we've got furniture, I've got the actual students to kind of cross-curricular it. So I've got them to search for free sites and things like that for free furniture. We've gone to collect it. We've got them researching on the computer how they want to upcycle it, what they'd like to do, whether it be butterflies or DC, Marvel, even graffiti. And then we've also got them doing a bit of emailing the head teacher, asking for a bit more of a budget, so we can buy these resources and things. So we've done that mainly in the afternoons, worked on it over a term, and they produced some amazing things. I think it does is the 4 R's. So it teaches resilience, resourcefulness, reflective capacity, relationships, building positive relationships, opening up those conversations like Victoria just mentioned. And I think it's almost like cognitive learning as well, because it starts to open up conversations, reflecting on experiences. You can then lend them your thinking brain, which is quite a big thing in Thrive, to be able to do that, problem solving, and also asking them questions to justify and explain their thinking. So it's worked exceptionally well within our alternative provision. So, and I think also we talk about play. I've had young men that have come into us that have a history of county lines and things, really quite trauma-based things in their past. And I've had them playing games where we've blindfolded them, which also embeds speaking and listening. So it's about listening to instructions, or get another student or even a teacher to create an assault course. It's about trust. And I think the Thrive base, the VRS, the vital relationship, what we call those, which is attuning, validating what they're saying, containment, and also teaching these young people how to regulate themselves. But these can all come in while you're doing this sort of project work. So it doesn't look like you're just saying you need to be able to do this or you need to be able to do that. It's a very nice slipping in how to re-regulate themselves as well, and how to build positive relationships, which they often do struggle with.
Yeah, brilliant. Helen, how about you? Anything to add on that one?
Did Vicky just want to say something?
Oh, sorry, Vicky.
Yeah, I was just gonna chip in with it, just to say that I completely agree with that. The whole the regulation side of things, like how much I think it makes it more memorable through doing it through these play ideas, because then they remember those moments much more than what they would perceive to be a bit of a lecture about their behaviour. So, and I think that's really, really important. Exactly the same. I think, that we're there to kind of help structure it and be alongside it, but then we can kind of leave them to it, really, and then it kind of just like organically grows from there. And then they spread the word around that other people, might want to get involved. But it's just quite a positive way of essentially telling them the way that things should be and how they should do things differently, but it feels less like a lecture. Yeah. I think, I just like, in some of the notes I'd made, I'd written down exactly the same thing there about how to kind of grow their window of tolerance and their tolerance to things that might happen in their life. Yeah. Just even by losing a game of Monopoly, they will potentially not have experienced how to lose and how to be gracious about it. It's like things like that I think are so important as a skill.
Yeah.
And I think I've also found that a lot of young people have come in and they haven't had these opportunities to play games. They haven't had opportunities to take turns. It is really not uncommon for us to get a year 10, year 11 student, and actually their real last placement of being in a classroom base is actually year 7 or 8. So sometimes we have 2-3 year gaps of them not being in a proper educational setting. And it's almost like we have to not just teach them, we have to teach them how to be within a classroom environment and how to have positive relationships. And I think Thrive has embedded that so much, and it's almost been like a foundation for us to build on and to get results. So
I think it's interesting what Vicky said there about sort of having a bit of a structure, but actually also giving the students the chance to go off and explore for themselves a little bit. Helen, that's quite important from what I gather on your research?
Yeah, definitely. It was really nice listening to you both actually speaking about how you do it, and and for some young people, you can just provide space and time and they would just get on with it. But for young people who've had difficulties in their past, who haven't had those opportunities to have kind of normal development play experiences, sometimes it does need to be a bit more structured, which is exactly what you're both doing, is providing that, just those kind of cues to play, or that initial opening of a game, or supporting that initial playing with somebody else their own age and building that friendship. And then, as you said, Vicky, I think like kind of backing away, so gradually giving them more space to do it for themselves. And Michaela, what you were talking about, even just we're thinking about the upcycling project, what you're doing is kind of empowering them to do something that they have ownership of, right, that feels like it's theirs, that makes them realize that they have some control and some autonomy, and all of those things are fantastic. And it really feels like you're kind of using play, it's a bit like a Trojan horse, right? It's kind of a way of getting in and communicating these things and teaching these things, but in a way that they don't realize that they're being taught them, which is exactly what you need to do. And I know you're both working with particular groups of young people, but actually these skills and the approaches apply for all young people, I think, right? And we don't do it enough as adults. We don't do it enough in our education system. We have a tendency to go with the least creative approach, which is that we'll stand in front of you and we'll tell you what we think and we'll expect you to absorb it and learn it and take it away. And actually, when we do it in a playful way, things stick, don't they? And young people learn things without even realizing that they're learning them. And it's so much more enjoyable for everybody. But of course, it requires that investment and that creativity and coming from a different perspective of realizing that, you know, young people can learn all of this stuff for themselves if we only give them the space and empower them to do it. They don't actually need us to spell everything out to them. But often as adults, unfortunately, that's the approach that we take, isn't it? And I'd be really interested to know, Simon, can I ask a question?
Feel free. Yeah.
The extent to which, I guess, Vicky in particular, like you taking that approach within a particular group in your school, has that encouraged other people to take a bit more of a playful approach to their work, do you think? Like, is it kind of spreading a little bit through the school?
Yeah, so initially, like I said, there was a bit of a what's this all about? Like, I don't think a lot of people had heard about Thrive either within my setting. Now that we're like a kind of over a year down the line, we've introduced it now through so we have a Thrive Thursday where we look at in particular what year 8, what their lowest developmental gap is as a different form group. So each form group would be a different thing, and then they would explore that. A lot of that's to do with play. A lot of our policies and our way of talking to pupils without the kind of confrontation. When I think about it, a lot of the wording of things is like, you know, using that playful language, being more curious about the way they are, which obviously lends itself hand in hand, really, because you're not being, the reaction you're going to get back is very, very different. And I think since we have been doing that, we've had quite a decline in the way in our big incidents and things as a school. So it is having a knock-on effect, but I think it's got to kind of gradually grow, because it is very different from some approaches that you would have taken back, you know, I don't know, like 17 years ago when I first started teaching. It is different. But for me, and I think the point I wanted to get across to like other staff as well, I actually find it a lot less stressful, because you're, you know, when you are more curious and you look beyond that behaviour and you are a bit more playful with your language, you actually get to the bottom of more things, and you don't reflect back on it and think, I could have handled that differently, because there isn't a thing to handle differently. So I think as it gradually, as time goes on, I think more staff will see that it's actually less stressful to be a bit more curious and playful, I think. I don't know whether you agree, Michaela.
Oh, 100%. And again, I go back to the VRS, that I use that just in how I approach them, how I teach a lesson, how I talk to them. So if they're in distress, I say, I validate what they're saying. They just want to be heard most of the time. You know, tune to them, understand where they're coming from. And then we go into containment, and then we try and regulate them. You know, most of the time, if you ask someone, they're not actually expecting an answer. They just want to be heard. They just want their voice to be heard. And I think that's part of the problem. And I know it's really, really hard when you're working with adolescents, because they can be very, you know, and like you said, the body language, you know, the hood's up and things like that. But it is all about breaking those barriers. It's about building up those relationships. And I think it's about understanding the students and understanding of their body language, but also being aware of our body language and our tone of voice. It's really, really important to implement those to get success.
Great. So to someone out there who might be watching this, who wants to sort of implement some of these ideas, some more sort of play-based approach, have you got any words of wisdom? Particularly, one question from me would have been, I guess part of it is selling it to stakeholders, including probably the students themselves, perhaps members of this leadership team who might be more sort of academically focused. Has that been a challenge for either of you two?
Yes, but then I think we'd got to a point where certain pupils, it was the same pupils all the time that are coming up on the referral list, the same pupils that were getting the exclusions. So something different and possibly, dare I say, a little bit radical needed to be tried. So I think from that point of view, we were at that point anyway. So it is always going to be the case that a pupil who has got some major developmental interruptions is not going to sit in a lesson and be able to learn. So I think from that point of view, we've got to try something different, and then over time you can kind of see how it goes. And I think it's, I suppose, just saying, well, you've just got to give us this opportunity to just give it a go, and we'll just see how it goes. And if it, you know, you're not and you're not going to win them all. That's not going to be the case, because, you know, your children who don't come to school, whose attendance is terrible for whatever reason it may be, you aren't going to win that battle with them. But it's having the strength to kind of say, well, look, let's just give this a try and see what happens next. And I think that was, for us as a school, like, they've definitely embraced that, and that has now started to show a different path for pupils, which has been really helpful. And seeing these pupils have much less huge responses to issues that they may face, and I think that's because of the relationship we develop with them and the way that we go about dealing with issues now, and the validation again, you know, being curious of why they are, like, saying whatever it is that they're saying. And again, then I think, you know, the people, like, you know, the head teachers, etc., they can see that their responses are very different when they're approached.
Do you find in some instances pupils might, you know, be a little bit reluctant to engage, especially adolescents, with the idea of, you know, oh, we're going to, you know, play games for an hour or something? Is there a bit of a sort of job to do there, selling it to them, either of you?
No.
Okay,
Bit of a queue at the door, to be honest.
I think personally, I think, you know, there's lots of different games you can play. I do a lot of quick fire questions, get them to ask them, or we ask them. Again, they open up conversations, but you get to know the student as well. I think with regards to selling it to people, is what Thrive does do. I think it does give you the tools and the foundation to build upon the understanding of behaviours, because we know behind every behaviour, there's a reason behind every behaviour. You know, if we're happy and we've succeeded in something, we're like, oh, yay, you know, all excited. But the same thing is for things that have gone wrong for people. There's a behaviour for that as well. And I think it's about looking at the bigger picture, and it's making the young people understand that actually it's okay to flip our lid every now and then. It is okay to be struggling with something, but being able to give them the opportunities to be able to talk and be able to open up a little bit, and to lend our thinking brain so that they understand their behaviours. And I think that is really key, really key.
Lovely. I was going to ask all of you if you had any sort of tips, points for further reading, anything you wanted to signpost our viewers to finish up with. Michaela, I'll stay with you.
Yeah, I've read quite a lot of Dan Siegel. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He's wrote some amazing literature regarding the teenage brain and mental health and things like that. And also another guy called Dan Hughes. Again, it's understanding the brain, it's understanding behaviours and how they may materialise or may look like. And I think the most important thing to read is your student, and to understand them in the moment.
A very good one to finish with. How about you, Vicky?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was going to say exactly the same to people, but in particular on YouTube, you can find like about a hand model of the brain, which really gives a good insight into what, you know, when we're telling our pupils to have have a good think about your behaviour and all that kind of stuff when they're really like dysregulated, about actually what's going on, like neurologically for them, that they can't have a good think about it. It just doesn't work like that. So that, I mean, that's quite helpful, and not just as a teacher either. I mean, that really helped me, you know, as a parent too. We know when my children, and they're only 5, but when they were doing certain different things, and my husband would say, "Why are they doing that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's the brain." I think that's been quite helpful, because it's meaning that I can put it in perspective. So that's, I mean, that's fab. But there are some brilliant videos as well about adolescent brains on YouTube that are just done in quite an accessible way, and any kind of search about adolescent brain will bring those up. So they'd be my go-tos.
Great stuff. And how about you, Helen?
Well, obviously I should plug the stuff that I write.
Feel free. Yeah.
Sorry, Helen.
No, it's fine. I'm only joking. So I think from a kind of play perspective, Peter Gray is very accessible and fantastic on kind of why children need play and what happens when play declines. There's a book on my bookshelf which I was trying to see the title of and can't, so I'm going to go grab it and tell you what it is. Here we are. It's called Let the Children Play, by Patty Solberg and William Doyle, which is about play in schools, which is fantastic. And also, just in terms of kind of quick free things that you can look up online, and there's an organisation called Learning Through Landscapes, who do some work on play in secondary schools, just kind of mainstream supporting secondary schools of play. And they've got a few documents that you can just download, kind of setting the case for play, but also some nice kind of case studies of schools that have taken a more playful approach, particularly thinking about playtime, which is a bit different to what we've been talking about here. But yeah, they do some really good work, so having a look at them would be good as well.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, lots of homework to take away then. Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks everyone for joining me today. That's been a really useful conversation, and loads for people to, like I say, loads for people to go off and explore there. So thank you all very much.